Hello, this is Tom from October CMS. In this video, I'll show you how to use October CMS Tailor to create a complete blog solution. Tailor is a tool built into October CMS and available right out of the box. Tailor allows you to add new content types and content management user interfaces without any PHP coding. You can create a blog solution, product list, or a custom landing page without leaving the October CMS administration area. In the background, Tailor efficiently manages the database structure and models, and you get the expected Laravel performance without extra overhead. The goal for this video is creating a blog solution that will include blog posts, categories, and search. A similar solution is included in the default demo theme shipped with October CMS. For this video, I will use CSS styles from the default theme and will focus only on the content side. I'll start with creating the blog post entry type. Creating entry types always starts with creating a blueprint file. Blueprints are YAML files stored in the app/blueprints directory. You can manage them using your favorite code editor, or you can use the built-in October CMS editor. I will use the editor. It's a good idea to keep blueprints organized, so I will create a blog folder for the blog blueprints. There are several blueprint types. Stream is the most suitable type for blog posts because it allows us to display entries in chronological order. The editor includes templates for all blueprint types, which makes it easy to start a new blueprint from scratch. As we are creating the post entry blueprint, I will call the file post.yaml. There are several properties that I need to define in the new blueprint: the handle, the name, and the navigation parameters. Handle is an internal Tailor blueprint identifier that you can use to refer one blueprint in another. It is especially handy with mixins that I'll explain later in this tutorial. All blueprints must have the handle properly defined. I will use the blog/post handle for my new blueprint. This naming convention helps to keep references clean. The name property is a string that will be displayed in the October CMS user interface. When we create a blueprint, Tailor automatically generates the entry management page in the administration area. For example, this post blueprint will create the post management page. We now need to define where that page can be found in the administration area navigation system. It can be done with the primary navigation and navigation properties. The primary navigation property creates a new item in the administration area main menu. It's an object with the label, icon, and order properties, which are all self-explanatory. I'm creating the main menu item with the label blog. The navigation property adds a new menu item. That object has the parent property, which defines a location for the menu item. In this case, I want to add an item to the blog item dropdown, so I use the blog/post value for the parent property. You will see how it works in a second. I will keep the fields property untouched for now and save the blueprint. Nothing special has happened so far, but let me click the Save and Migrate button. That's when Tailor does its magic. The new item, blog, appears in the primary menu. It opens a drop-down with the post item. The item opens the Posts Management page, which includes the blog post list, filters, import and export features, and the Create Post Entry button. The button opens the blog post management page, which looks pretty boring at the moment. That's how the blog post entry is defined in the blueprint. I will now add a rich editor, featured text, and a banner image fields to the post because they are typical for blog solutions. To define blueprint fields, we use the same language as creating backend forms. I will put the documentation link in the video description. First, I will replace the description field with the content field and will make it a rich editor type. I want the editor to take the entire area of the form, so I will use the adaptive value for the span property. Next, I will add the featured text field to the Manage tab. And finally, I will add the banner image field to the same tab. Every time I want Tailor to apply changes, we need to click the Save and Migrate button. The changes were applied, and the post editor looks as expected. I will now quickly create and publish 3 blog posts so that we have some content to show on the website. The next step is displaying blog posts on the website. we need to create several pages for our blog. I will start from the main blog page that will display all posts with pagination. Again, I will do everything in the built-in editor, although you can use your favorite code editor. I will call the new page template index.htm and put it in the blog folder to keep the templates organized. Tailor provides several CMS components. The collection component can be used to display a list of entries. I'm adding the component and renaming it to blog. In the record handle dropdown, I'm selecting the blog/post option. It is required, as you may have multiple Tailor entry types defined. Believe it or not, the page is almost done. The next thing is to fetch posts from the collection. I will use the paginate method to extract the first 2 posts. Why only 2? Just because I created 3 posts and I want to show you how pagination works. Once I have the posts array, I can iterate through it and display blog posts. I will start from displaying completely unstyled content: the banner, post title, featured text, and the publish date. As you can see, they are accessible as regular object properties using the names we defined in the blueprint. The title and published at date properties are special and provided by Tailor automatically. Let's preview the page. Everything works as expected, although some styling wouldn't harm. I will apply styles from the existing theme later. For now, let me add the pagination links and make sure they work. Tailor provides pagination out of the box using the links collection property. The pagination works as expected. I will now move the post details markup to a CMS partial because I'm going to reuse it on other pages. I will also style the post list using the demo theme CSS styles. I won't cover the styling work in this video to save your time. The next step is the blog categories. As you may have guessed, to support blog categories, I need to define the category blueprint. I will use the structure blueprint type for blog categories. Structure entries support nesting, which you may want in your blog, but it won't be covered in this video to keep it simple. The process of creating the blueprint is already familiar. I define values for the handle and name properties, add a navigation menu item. The navigation menu item will belong to the primary navigation item defined in the blog post blueprint. I do it by specifying the post blueprint handle in the parent property. Finally, I add a description text input. Now I just need to migrate the blueprint and make sure the menu item appears in the blog dropdown. Yes, it's where it's expected to be. Let's click it and define several categories. Now that we have categories defined, we need to link them to the post entry. To do it, I need to edit the post blueprint and add the categories field of the entries type. I also need to specify the source for the relation, which is the handle value we just defined on the category blueprint. Migrating the post blueprint. Let's see if there are any changes in the blog post management user interface. Yes, the category selector is now displayed on the Manage tab. I want to display basic author information on the blog post page. For the author, I will choose the most generic blueprint type, the entry. This type doesn't support nesting or automatic sorting, which we don't need for authors. For the entry fields, I create 2 text inputs, for the job role and about text. Remember that the title input is provided by Tailor automatically. For the avatar, I will add the Media Finder widget. Migrating the Author Blueprint. The Author item has appeared in the blog menu. I can now create several authors. And the last step is to add the author relation to the blog post blueprint. I'm adding the author field of the entries type. I'll also limit the number of entries with 1 because there can only be one author for a post, and we'll use the author blueprint handle for the source property. Don't forget to migrate the blueprint after changing the fields. I can now assign authors and categories for all blog posts that I created so far. My blog posts now have categories and authors, but they are not displayed in the blog post list. Let me fix it. I will edit the blog post CMS partial that I created earlier. The categories property is a collection, so I can use the for loop to display posts categories. Category objects have the title property defined by Tailor. Displaying the author is even simpler because we only have one author per post, so I can access it via the author property of the post object and output its title. It works and looks as expected. Now let's talk about field groups and mixins. Imagine that your client has several blog authors and some of them prefer to use the Markdown language for posts and others prefer the rich editing experience. How would you support both options? Fortunately, Tailor supports blueprint field grouping. Let me show you how it works. In the post blueprint, we already have the Content Rich Editor field. I'm creating a field group with the rich editor name and moving all existing fields to that group. As usual, I need to migrate the blueprint before refreshing the post editing page. Let's create a new post. As you can see, the post management page now includes a drop-down that lets me choose a field group. So far, it only contains one item. Let's return to the blueprint editor. I can now create another group for the Markdown editor. I'm adding the content field of the Markdown type. And now here's a question. What should I do with other fields? I can copy all of them to the new group, but it would be very inefficient. Instead, I will use the Tailor mixin feature that allows us to reuse parts of blueprints. I'm creating a new blueprint of the mixin type. As usual, I need to define the handle and name properties. For the fields property, I will move all fields except the content from the blog post blueprint. I will now save and migrate my mixin, and it's ready for use. Back to the blog post blueprint. I'm creating a new field of the mixin type in both field groups, for the Markdown and rich editors. Let's migrate the blueprint and test the post editing page. I can now select Markdown and Rich Editor in the drop-down menu. All other fields stay the same, and they even keep their values when I change the editor type. Let's keep the fun going and create the blog post page on the front end. To display a blog post, we need to know its slug. By the way, slugs are generated by Tailor automatically, but users can change them in the Publish pop-up. I'm creating the blog post page and defining the slug URL parameter. Tailor provides a CMS component called Section that allows us to display a single entry on a page. I will rename the component to Post and select a proper entry handle in the Record Handle dropdown. In the Entry Slug field, I need to enter the name of the slug URL parameter. I will first output the basic post properties without styling: post title, post content, categories, and author. Displaying the post content requires using different twig filters for the content property. For the Markdown editor, we want to convert the value to HTML using the MD twig filter. For the Rich editor, we want to output the raw value because it includes HTML tags. I can now open the blog post page and use a slug of any existing blog post in the URL. It works and requires styling, but again, I will do the styling offline to save your time. One missing part is linking blog posts from the post list. I will fix it by editing the blog post card CMS partial that I created before. I will use the page twig filter with the slug parameter from the blog post object. Slug is another entry property supplied by Tailor automatically. Next up, the category page. The page should display the list of blog posts published in a specific category. To display a category, we need to know its slug, so I'm adding the slug URL parameter. I will use the Tailor section CMS component with the blog category record handle and will put the slug URL parameter in the entry slug property. So far, it's not too different from creating the blog post page. I will also add the Tailor collection CMS component to fetch blog posts. Displaying the category post list is an interesting part because it requires using the Laravel API to fetch all posts containing the categories relation with a specific slug. Fortunately, it is easy to do. Tailor collections support all the Laravel database query methods so that I can use the familiar where_relation method. Now that I have the post list, I can paginate and display it using the existing CMS partial. The category page now exists, but there are no links to categories yet. There are two places where I can add them: on the blog post page and on the blog sidebar. I will first add category links to the blog post page. It is easy with the Page CMS filter. Adding all categories to the blog sidebar is a bit more interesting. The blog sidebar is shared between many pages: the blog post list, blog post page, category page, author page, post search page, etc. It suggests that we should use a special CMS layout for all blog pages. That layout would include the category list, the search field, and any other elements you want to see on the blog pages. To keep the layout file simple, I will create a sidebar CMS partial. Again, I will use the Tailor collection CMS component to display categories. After setting a proper record handle, I can use the regular for loop to output a category title with a link to the category page. Let's see how it works. For the next thing, I want to output the About This blog text on the blog sidebar. I can hard code that text in the sidebar partial, but I want my client to be able to edit that text without the need to edit the CMS template. It can be achieved with Tailor Globals. Globals are special blueprints that can define configuration forms. Let me show you how to use globals. I'm creating a new blueprint and selecting the global type, setting the name, handle, and creating the navigation menu item. And for the fields, I will create the About This blog text field. Migrating the blueprint. The blog menu now has the settings item, and I can edit the About This blog field. Let's output the field value on the blog sidebar. To access globals on the CMS pages, Tailor provides the Global CMS component. After adding the component, renaming it to Blog Settings, and selecting a correct handle, I can access it in the partial code by name and output the About This Blog value. The blog search feature consists of two parts: the search field in the blog sidebar and the search page. Let's create the search page first. The page URL should just be blog/search, without URL parameters. On this page, we expect the search term to be passed as a GetRequest query parameter. I use the Tailor Collection CMS component again, and record handle is the only configuration parameter I need to provide. I can extract the search query from the term query parameter using the get function. Now that I have the search query, I can pass it into the search where Tailor database query method and provide the field list I want to search in. As usual, I will paginate the collection using the pagination method. On the blog search page, I want to show the search form above the search results. The form code is extremely simple. It only has one input, and the input value is the search term that I just extracted from the query. And the last step is displaying the blog posts. I use the regular for loop and the blog post partial that I created before. The blog search page is ready. Let's see if it works. It works as expected. I only need to add the search form to the blog sidebar. It is basically the same form as I have on the search page, except that I need to specify the search page URL. It's easy with the page filter. The blog search feature is done, and our blog solution is done too. As I already mentioned, the default demo theme includes the Tailor-based blog solution. You can play and modify it as you need. Let's stop for a moment and reflect on what I just did. I created the blog management solution without creating database tables, without coding forms, without creating backend controller classes and pages. The solution I created is simple, but it already saved hours or days of work. You can now deliver your projects faster and make your clients happier. I didn't show you some features that you get out of the box. For example, the drafts feature is disabled for all the entries I created. If you enable it for the blog post blueprint, you will be able to edit multiple copies of a post separately, preview them, and publish the best one. I'll let you explore the drafts by yourself. Make sure to subscribe to the October CMS YouTube channel. In the next episode, we will show how to use Tailor for creating landing pages. See you soon!